Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining. Our next presentation comes from StageZero Life Sciences Chairman and CEO, Mr. James Howard Tripp. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. And I'll pick it up from here, so thank you. So good morning, everyone, and nice to speak to you bright and early. We're StageZero Life Sciences, and we're all about cancer, and we're all about Aristotle. We'll talk a lot about this. I'll take you first of all to the slide with the forward-looking statements. I'd ask that you please pay attention to it and read it carefully. So who and what is StageZero? So we're it's the result of about 20 years of research, which comes through the Sentinel principle, leading to a program called Aristotle that I'll talk considerably about this morning. And we are developing it at this point for the early detection of cancer, or I should say the detection of early cancer. And it's an extremely large opportunity, as I think you can see from the number of players that are in it and the size of them. We also commercialize proprietary, so our own test, for example, Colon Sentry, which was the first blood-based test for colorectal cancer that was put into the marketplace, as well as third-party clinical molecular diagnostic tests, for example, for prostate cancer and breast cancer. We're PCR-based. As a result of that, we were able to respond to the requests to get involved with COVID testing. We'll talk quite a bit about this because COVID has provided tremendous advantages for us as we move forward, both in terms of accelerating a lot of the things that we had anticipated would happen in the marketplace, but also because it's providing us with some very good revenue and a very strong build-out of our organization. A lot of this ties into the personalized health management via telehealth. We started down this path about 2 years ago, believing that it was going to be critical. It has turned out much better than we ever expected, in that everything is accelerated and everything today is about telehealth. We'll talk about this more in detail. So if you look at the catalyst for right now, we intend to launch Aristotle in this quarter, in Q1, and begin to take it out. You'll see a series of very novel partnerships as we go through, and we'll talk more as we go in what we term a new kind of cancer company. It's a cancer company for the 21st century. So we'll explain more about that as we go on down the quarter. If you look at what COVID has done, it's very significantly changed the marketplace. And I think one of the sort of strongest messages we're having to talk to people about is this isn't 2018. It's not 2019. Whatever you were doing back then, in fact, by and large, doesn't work now. And for example, some of the reasons we look at cancer screening for early diagnosis. If you look at the stats, it's down anywhere from 40 to 94%. People aren't getting colonoscopies. People are not getting mammograms. It's not occurring. Most of the offices are closed. If they are open, the patients aren't going. If they are going, it's not because of early cancer screening. So there's a huge concern right now that we have this absolute tsunami, as it is described, of late-stage cancers coming at us. And they're beginning to appear because patients are waiting until they're truly symptomatic before they seek help. And so it's beginning to build out. So we know we have to get back to screening. We know we have to get it going. The question is how. We believe that how is mostly through telehealth, at least for the next 24 to 36 months. And we think that it plays a huge role even beyond that. And quite obviously, any launch of a new product has to take that into consideration. We talk about come for COVID, stay for cancer. We talked about the fact I think that COVID has been a boon for us, and it has. If you go back to when we decided that telehealth was where the marketplace was going, maybe about 6% of what was done in terms of clinical practice was through telehealth. If you go to the Harvard Hospital Group statistics, you go to Northwell in New York, you talk to them, they'll tell you it's in excess of 80-odd percent, 85% of what they currently do today, and they'll tell you without it, they couldn't do their job. No one expects it to remain at that level, but we also don't expect it to drop back perhaps below about 50%. And so if you're going to be a player in the space, you need to have this. We have it. We moved early. We have it. We've been able to hone all of this as we've gone out through COVID and developed all of the testing. We were working with Mercer's VIP program on cancer, notably the tests that we had, but also preparing for the introduction of Aristotle. This got pushed sideways with COVID, but it has allowed us to build out in all of these areas. And if you look at the size of our organization, we're now 2.5 times the size of what we were back in March. All of that has been paid for through the COVID side. It has truly helped us build out. It makes us much more prepared for Aristotle. So everything right now is a preparation for the commercial launch of Aristotle. We go to our launch plan. We're going to launch as an LDT. FDA path will follow. We intend to take this through FDA, but we actually don't see FDA being of all that much benefit right now. I think it's interesting, too, if you look at what has been said by some of the other players in the space, they, too, having gone from FDA or talked about FDA, are now moving much more to LDT. It is because it's what makes sense right now. It's also obviously an immediate source of revenue. So part of this, and perhaps I'll leave this slide for the moment because I'll go into it in more detail in others, but we'll cover through as to why we believe we have an advantage in the marketplace, why we believe we are well positioned, and why we think the test will be well accepted. So telehealth, we talked about. If you think about it, if we expand on it, if the patients aren't coming to you, you have to go to them. You talk to any of the large pharma groups, for example, that are in the cancer space, and they have mostly their reps idled at home at this point. I know certain of the groups, as I talk to, the reps are not allowed in actual fact into the physician offices or into the hospitals because the physicians don't want them there. Their focus is COVID. Their focus after that is MIs and strokes and all the other urgent stuff that they need. It's not regarding the routine screening. So if you are going to be able to, if you're going to enable this, you have to have a means to enable it, which means you have to have a really strong telehealth system built out. We started down this path about 2 years ago. I think we raised some eyebrows as people said, so why are you doing that? We were convinced it was going to be a critical piece of the marketplace as we went forward. It has been, and so literally we have an ability to act between the physician and the patient, to actually get to the patient, to get the samples drawn, to get them back to the lab, to get them processed, to get the information out. And the part that we're building now as we move towards a more vertically integrated company is to ensure that we have both the capability to draw these samples no matter where they are, but also refer the patient in for either treatment or remediation as it moves through. And we have a series of novel programs as those come through. In addition to that, through groups such as Mercer, the groups that have come for COVID, we have parties that are already interested in the cancer and will be introducing it through them. So it's absolutely critical. Without this, we could not do all of these pieces. And as I talked about earlier, it has really taken us to the forefront of where we need to be. The revenue opportunities are clear. We had a good quarter last quarter. We did our first sort of real revenue, 1.5 million, which one would say is not all that amazing, but it was a nice beginning. Bearing in mind that we've typically spent only about $300,000 a month in terms of cost. We run very lean and mean. Obviously, as we're building out that works, we haven't reported Q4. We're just closing Q4, but we've had a very good Q4. We're very pleased with it. We're shaping up to have a really nice Q1 into this year as we go. And obviously, all of the revenue that we're driving through this goes to build out the organization, goes to build out our capability. And I mentioned that we're about 2.5 times larger than we were about 9 months ago. All of this is not just aimed at doing COVID. We see COVID being perhaps a a sort of 12 to 18-month opportunity from this point going forward, but it's much more preparing us for Aristotle. So as we springboard into the launch of Aristotle, we're just nicely prepared. We should begin to see revenue, certainly towards the end of Q1 from Aristotle, and then obviously building out through Q2 on. So this slide is purely to illustrate that. You go to the cancer testing landscape, and we talked about this. Liquid biopsy is something of a buzzword, but it's certainly very much to the forefront in terms of where everything is. We have done extensive modeling as we've worked with different groups, and certainly by finding cancer, but finding cancer early, you have a distinct advantage. So everything that you do is towards that. If you think about where the market is today, it's a little less about the insurers. It's much more about self-funded. It's more about self-pay. So you have to be able to operate in that space, and that is what it is for us. I think the reason that on this slide that we, for example, put up some of the valuations of the other organizations out there is to draw attention to what the valuations are that are being given to plays in this market space. And if you want to look at the opportunity versus us, take a look at our market cap, and it's a matter of seeing where it's possible for us to go. Our science goes under the umbrella of the Sentinel principle. And it is that circulating blood reflects in a detectable way what is occurring throughout the body. So in other words, by taking a sample of whole blood and interrogating the genes, looking for gene expression, we can by and large track pretty much any disease in the body. We can stage it, we can track it over time. It is dynamic. It tells you right now exactly what is occurring. And that for us is really critical. As we talked about, it's about 20 years worth of work, and it's really nice to see it coming to fruition. Just waiting for the next slide. There we are. So, we talk a little bit about what others dream of creating, we've already developed, and I think that's really important. A lot of our peers in the marketplace have not yet got their science to fruition. That is because they're relative newcomers to the space. They're still doing a lot of the work to prove that they can actually do it. If you go out and look at the sort of relative accuracy, I think on average, people are in the kind of 40 to 50% range. That's an awkward one. If you say to the patient or you say to the physician, I think you have cancer, but I'm not sure quite what cancer it is, and I'm not entirely sure that it is cancer versus another disease, it's not a very satisfactory outcome. You need to be as definitive as possible. The advantage with us is this is what we've done. And so if you look at colon Sentry has been in the marketplace for a significant amount of time. We have over 100,000 commercial patients in the U.S. that have actually gone through this. And as a result of that, we know that our science performs. There's a very recent paper on that actually goes over this. But it's not about will our science work. It's a fact our science does work. And therefore, it's we're not dreaming of creating it. We have it. Aristotle is a multi-cancer platform. It'll be a single sample of blood. At this particular point, it will be 10 specific cancers. We can go higher than that, but we just need to generate the data for 10 specific cancers. We'll talk in a moment about high sensitivity and specificity. And key in all of this is that it can fully discriminate each of the cancers. I'll say that again. It can fully discriminate each of the cancers. As we've modeled it, there's a lot of debate as to the size of the market. However we look at it, it's extremely large. We think that in our hands, Aristotle could potentially be as much as a $2 billion global revenue opportunity. It is built on the proven technology platform that I was just talking about in terms of where we are. And we're in the process of completing the last pieces from a cap and clear perspective as we get ready to take it out. This is the data that we have put out in public. You'll see that it has high sensitivity and specificity. An advantage with this is because if I go back in the science a little bit, what we have done is we started in multiple disease states, and then from multiple disease states, we worked down to cancer, which is a natural progression. But in all of this, you not only have to be able to say that this is, for example, bladder cancer, not some other form of cancer. You've got to be able to say it with high sensitivity and specificity. But you've also got to be able to say that, you know what, it's not some other disease that could have given rise to the gene expression. The only way you can do that means that you have to have done considerable work in other diseases. I think that's one of the very clear advantages that we bring forward. Why are we different? It's a little bit of a play on that we're talking about. We're developing a male and female panel, but much more importantly, I'll hammer home again, we can fully discriminate the cancers. It is because we have done the work, all of the cancers in parallel, the cancers discretely. It is because it's based off of the original work that we did that led to the development of colon centry. And then it is that in comparison to all the other diseases that we have done. Proven, not promised. We're very excited about the cancer panel for women. Women, by and large, are an underserved market segment. We all know that. This is really nice. The four specifically female cancers that we look at, which are, ovarian, cervical, endometrial, and breast, are key from a female perspective. If any of you know someone that's died of ovarian cancer, it's absolutely miserable. I unfortunately do, and you want to find it early, and you want to be able to do something with it. If we can have an effect in this space, that's exactly what we're after. So we're very much looking forward to introducing this. We're not going to stop at cancer. Cancer's first. It's critical. It's where we want to be. But bear in mind that as we develop all of this, we've got a lot of data already, but two, we're going to continue to generate large amounts of data. And the key thing with this is to look at where we go. Neuroscience is an area that we very particularly have an interest in. Also the inflammatory diseases. There are a lot of common pathways as you go down the inflammatory aspect. There are a lot of ways that you would want to, one, look at it, but then also deal with it. It's been very interesting as we're working with the cancer clinics as to how they can, in fact, intervene in this space. And so we're definitely looking for cancer first, but beyond cancer, we'll look at other areas. Aristotle is a program that is multi-disease. So recent highlights, I think we were talking about, while we were developing all of the systems, we pivoted into COVID. COVID has enabled us to build out in all kinds of ways. And as I mentioned earlier, we talked about the Q3 revenue, we talked about Q4, now actually continuing that trajectory, which is really nice. It's continuing into Q1 as we go. Our burn rate is still relatively low. We do run as lean and mean as we possibly can. So in other words, that gives us a good amount of money to spend on the build out. And everything that we're doing is expanding and getting ready for the launch of Aristotle. So we're really pretty excited about what lies in front of us. Just waiting for the slide. There we are. I think the other part with this is to go back to the model that we've talked about working with here. So the come for COVID, stay for cancer is really important. Because once you work with groups, and so part of what we're doing is we're trying to be very selective in which groups we work with on the COVID side. But it's also so that, yes, come for COVID, get to know us, we work together. But then we would like to walk you down the cancer path. And so we're having those discussions in parallel. And it means that we're a tried and tested partner at the point at which we get this introduction. And so we can begin to move out straight through that. And that's a key one for us. The other thing, too, is if we're working with companies, and particularly if the companies are self-funded, we can show that we have a very marked impact on their cost structure that is beneficial all the way through. With the arrangement that we're putting together with the cancer clinics, obviously, if we find people that have cancer, that are presumed to have cancer, they can now get referred on into all of the right treatment modalities. So all of that works. So definitely look for a much more integrated approach as we go forward, but with the partners already at the table. We have experience with very large groups. Our experience in Arizona has been very positive, but so too is as we've worked out with a variety of other operations. We are operating at pretty high volume at this point as we run it through, which means that allows us to bring all of the automated systems online. And we're in the process of actually expanding the lab as we talk. And so finally, we are developing a new kind of cancer company. We want a position for the 21st century. We want all of the key pieces as it plays out. We want to use every single advantage that has actually come to us through COVID, as unfortunate as COVID has been. It has actually helped position us. And then we want to take Aristotle, which is the culmination of all of the work that we've done, and really bring it to fruition. We look forward to all of that occurring this quarter. And so with that, we can actually move to take questions.
Yes, thank you, Jim. And we do have a few questions here. Let's start with, what are the 1 to 2 things investors should look for from StageZero in 2021?
Okay, so first would be ongoing revenue growth. Second would, that would start with COVID and then move across to Aristotle. Obviously, the launch of Aristotle, which would be really important as we build out. And I think the third thing in this is the growth of our company, the transformation of our company from perhaps a small diagnostic group into a much more integrated cancer delivery company or cancer, let's say, diagnosis and treatment company.
All right, thank you. And secondly, have you taken any steps yet for FDA approval?
No, we haven't. FDA, we see, so first of all, FDA takes a significant amount of time. 2, it is very expensive. So as I'm talking about a little earlier, we are taking it out as an LDT to begin with. However, all the pieces are going into place with respect to being able to take it to FDA at an appropriate point. And that we will do. Aristotle's the kind of product ultimately we would like to see FDA approved. It would make sense, but it's not step 1.
All right, well, that will do it for today. Thank you so much for your time today, Jim. I appreciate the feedback and your discussion. Thank you.
You're welcome.